Hello and welcome to episode 3 of the main headline, the news in context. The subject this week is the recent announcement of the general election in Britain on July 4th. I'm going to talk about that, and I'm also going to put the situation of elections in context. So I'm going to start with this article in the Telegraph. Sunak calls general election. How drenched PM fired the starting pistol on a summer vote. Rishi Sunak declared that now is the moment for Britain to choose its future as he announced the general election on July 4th. Speaking in Downing Street in the pouring rain.
Plan and priorities I set out are working.
And that Sunak clip with him in the rain giving his speech obviously gives the message to the public that this is not the guy you want to vote for. This is not a guy that you would trust to run the country, because the idea is that Starmer is the chosen one and he and the Labour Party come into power.
Front pages let Sunak have it, it can only get wetter and drown and out.
And Sunak giving a speech outside in the pouring rain, that's no accident, because he knows that the Tory party are designed to lose the election. He knows that. And Keir Starmer will be the next Prime Minister of Britain. So Mr. Sunak vowed to fight for every vote as he pitched the election as a direct battle between him and Sir Keir Starmer. As the Prime Minister made the announcement outside Number 10, his speech was disrupted by loud music, the new Labour anthem, Things Can Only Get Better, being played. Well, if Labour get into power, then if people think things are bad now under the Tories, it's going to get much worse, because you're going to have the fascism of the woke agenda, which is the agenda of this global cult that I write and talk about, and I'll get to them in a minute. The fascism of the COVID hoax, but increased by 10 times, 100 times. In response to the news, Sir Keir Starmer hit back by saying that backing his party would be a vote to stop the chaos. There'd be more chaos. He said, "Here it is, the future of the country is in your hands. On the 4th of July, you have the choice, and together we can stop the chaos, we can turn the page, we can start to rebuild Britain and change our country." Well, change in the image of woke and fascism, yes, absolutely. So, we're told that we live in a democracy where anyone can become Prime Minister and President. In America, we had a situation from 1981 to 2009, when 1981 Reagan was officially president, but the older George Bush, who'd already been head of the CIA, was running the show. So technically, Bush was running that presidency, especially towards the end of Reagan's presidency, when he had kind of mental challenges, a bit like Biden now, except Biden's obviously worse. But it doesn't matter, because he's not calling the shots, just like the political leaders never are. From 1981 to 2009, Bush or Clinton was in the presidency. And you look at America now, you've got 330 million people, and yet you had a situation from 1981 to 2009 when two political families were running officially American presidency. And then Obama came in, and to run for political office requires colossal amounts of funding. And you look at Obama's political campaign, and most of that funding, in his case, came from Wall Street, which is owned by this cult. So they funded Obama because they knew he was going to represent the agenda of those that control Wall Street. And then came Donald Trump, and he borrowed vast amounts of money from 72 banks, and they should have been declared bankrupt. But he built 2 casinos in Atlantic City, he built the Taj Mahal, and he would have needed to fund $6 billion, including $1 billion of his own money. And Alan Pomerantz, a real estate attorney who represented the banks, said that Trump was over-leveraged with casinos, an airline, a yacht, a helicopter. And Pomerantz said, "We made the decision that he would be worth more alive to us than dead," meaning bankrupt. "We want him out in the world selling these assets for us." And Pomerantz added that Trump's a great salesman. Well, he certainly sold himself to the alternative media in America, who, just because Trump said he was going to be different, they believed that he was, despite spending decades before then telling people that whoever you vote for, the government still gets in, the government that controls the official government, in other words. And that brings me on to the topic of neoconservatives and what some people call democons. When you look at politics, only a tiny few in each party need to have at least some awareness. The others are voting for it, and they answer to that party hierarchy, and then that party hierarchy answers to the next level, which is the secret society level, which I'll get to later. Neoconservatism is a political movement that began in America in the 1960s in the Vietnam War among foreign policy hawks who were frustrated with the Democratic Party because they thought it was too pacifist. And the George W. Bush administration, which oversaw the war on terror, was a classic example of a neoconservative government. And the key point is one step back from the neocons and the democons, the cult networks away. I'll get into that in more detail. A Daily Mail article published in November 2023 entitled "Revealed: The Poison Plotters in Number 10, Nadine Dorries unveils the shocking story of a shadowy clique that has been manipulating the Tory party for 20 years. This article describes the equivalent of the neocons and democons for the Tory party in Britain. And it will be the same for the Labour Party and Liberal Democrats and all these major parties around the world. And the clique involves former Downing Street advisor Dominic Cummings, who said he drove, despite having bad eyesight, to Barnard Castle, where there's a GlaxoSmithKline testing centre. Tory party advisor Douglas Smith and Secretary of State Michael Gove, plus the most mysterious individual of all, a character not named in the article but referred to as Dr. No, who wields enormous influence and whom everyone is scared of, which most likely means he's higher in the hidden hierarchy. Dr. No was described as a man who's been involved for 40 years now, and he's the key player in central office and number 10, who very few people have ever met. Rishi Sunak doesn't move without first seeking his advice, Dorries was told. Sunak's journey to Prime Minister was overseen by Dr. No and would not have happened otherwise. Dr. No is said to be a bad-tempered, frightening man who has always operated in the shadows. He gives the impression that he has something over everyone, secrets over people in powerful positions related to his presence at sex parties, possibly. Dr. No apparently likes to hint that he had once been a spook, The article says, all too often it is their hands on the levers which raise ministers up and drop them back down, even if they are sitting prime ministers with an 80-seat majority, as Boris Johnson was. They also brought down Ian Duncan Smith as party leader, who created havoc for Theresa May and undermined Liz Truss. The top-level contact told Doris that for this clique, it's not about democracy or the wishes of the people, it's about the decisions of a powerful, privileged and controlling few. They are the power and the throne, with an entire network singing to their tune. So, in other words, as I've been saying for the last 18 years now, prime ministers and presidents are not making decisions. Every one of the more than 50 insiders interviewed by Doris, from prime ministers and party leaders through cabinet ministers to civil servants and backbenchers to special advisors, told the same story. Some of the members were said to be in favour of the liberalisation of drug laws, incest and paedophilia. And just an earlier point that I just mentioned, one of the quotes I just read out, Dr. No is said to be someone that has secrets over people in powerful positions. One of the ways which they force people, I guess the person has to go along with it as well, but force people to, in politics, including prime ministers, to vote in the way the hierarchy of the party wants and those beyond the party, is to blackmail them with paedophilia and film them in, obviously they don't know they're being filmed, but film them in compromising positions. And then if they don't want to push for a certain piece of legislation or policy, then the question is, where should I send this video? What media organisation should I send this video to? So that's one of the ways to control politics. And what we have with politics is a controlled situation in which, while the party may change, the agenda continues despite apparently different people in different ideologies, different ways of looking at the world and how to run the country being in power. The same agenda continues. And the speed might change, the speed of introduction. For example, in America, the Republican Party, its natural constituency is made up of people who don't want the woke agenda, they don't want the democratic woke agenda being imposed. They don't want the fascism of woke. They don't want the nonsense, the insanity of woke being introduced. And so there are policies that the Democratic Party could introduce without any pushback that the Republican Party would find it harder to introduce, or they'd have to find the excuse for it, or maybe events would be manipulated to justify it. So the same agenda will be introduced, it's just the only thing is the speed of change. And on top of that, another controlling network in politics is Zionism out of Israel. The number of Zionists in positions of power in America is incredible. Less than 2% of the American population are Jewish. And you don't have to be Jewish to be a Zionist. You just have to support Israel. And yet, when you look at the number of people in powerful positions in American politics alone, never mind in military intelligence, never mind in corporations and other important businesses in America, the number of Zionists in American politics throughout the parties and throughout the generations, decades. It's astonishing. What are the chances of that in a country with less than 2% Jewish people? It's not about Jewish people, it's about a political philosophy. And Zionism has its people in business, banking, media, politics, Silicon Valley, etc. Worldwide, it's a global network operating out of Israel, and that's another way that politics is controlled. And for 18 years now, I've been talking about a global network with a network of secret societies and other organizations with an interlocking core, which I call the global cult. The cult manipulate global banking, business, finance, government, military intelligence, media, etc., towards the imposition and introduction of a dystopian agenda. And this cult, I'm currently researching a book about the history of this cult, who they are, how they got to where they are now. But it's enough to say here that the cult is a network of family bloodlines going back to the ancient world, to places like Sumer and Babylon, which we now call Iraq, which is one of the reasons for the invasion of that country. Israel wanted the invasion of that country. The cult moved to Europe, to places like Britain, France, Italy, and eventually America and the wider world. Their quest for global domination began in the form of royalty, when royalty, for reasons I've explained in my latest book, Reality Check, claimed the right to rule because they said they had special genetics, basically. Eventually, people rejected this rule by bloodline and monarchy, obvious control by monarchy, and the cult moved into the positions of business, banking, media, etc. And this form of control is infinitely more effective because people don't rebel against control that they don't accept even exists or know exists. Current events at any point in time are not random or spontaneous, and the people announcing the decisions directing society and the world in general are not the origin of those decisions, they're just the PR people for those decisions. Their job is to sell it and, in terms of government, introduce it through changes in legislation and policy. Politicians are fated as the arbiters of decisions when they are merely puppets for the real power. So to understand where the real power lies, we need to look at who and what is always there, while governments and presidents and prime ministers come and go. And this is known by some as the permanent government, and encompasses military intelligence agencies and the inner core of a global secret society network. This secret society network locks in at the controlling level, not everybody in organizations, but the controlling level, to all these different areas of society. That's the controlling center. American author Edward Bernays, known as the father of spin, public relations, in other words, lying, said the secret was engineering the consent to control and regiment people according to our will without their knowing about it. Bernays described this as the true ruling power in our society and called it an invisible government. This is also known today as the secret government or the deep, deep state. Bernays described social engineering organizations which are fundamental in shaping society and perception in his book Propaganda, published in 1928, and he says this: "We are governed, our minds are moulded, our tastes formed, our ideas suggested, largely by men we have never heard of. In almost every act of our daily lives, whether in the sphere of politics or business, in our social conduct or our ethical thinking, we are dominated by the relatively small number of persons who understand the mental processes and social patterns of the masses. It is they who pull the wires which control the public mind." People say it's impossible for a few people to control the world, but with the right structure, it's a cakewalk. if you look at the structure of a multinational corporation like McDonald's, for example, or Costa Coffee or whatever, you're looking at the structure of a multinational corporation, but you're also looking at the structure of this global cult and how it operates. A multinational corporation dictates from its headquarters the policy to its subsidiaries, who then carry out the centrally dictated policy in their sphere of influence, in their country, in their area. This structure allows for global simultaneous coordination. The cult secret society network can be symbolized as a spider's web. At the center of the web is the spider, the cult. Then the next set, the strands around the spider, the first set of strands around the spider encompass the most exclusive secret societies, which don't even have names. Obviously makes them harder to identify. The innermost core, and I emphasize the innermost core, or highest degrees of secret societies we do know about, constitute the next set of strands: Freemasons, Knights Templar, Knights of Malta, Opus Dei, etc. And I emphasize the inner core, not the local lodge, which is peopled by members who are as clueless about what I'm talking about now as the general population. Public-facing secret societies, known as forums or think tanks, like the World Economic Forum, whose leader, Klaus Schwab, said on camera, has penetrated politics in country after country.
This notion to integrate young leaders is part of the World Economic Forum since many years. When I mention now names like Mrs. Merkel, even Vladimir Putin and so on, they all have been young global leaders of the World Economic Forum. Mm-hmm. But what we are very proud of now is the young generation, like Prime Minister Trudeau, President of Argentina and so on, that we penetrate the cabinets. So yesterday I was at a reception for Prime Minister Trudeau, and I know that half of this cabinet, or even more half of this cabinet, are actually young global leaders of the World Economic Forum.
And that's true in Argentina too. Wow.
Yeah.
Sorry. That's true in Argentina as well.
It's true in Argentina, and it's true in France now. Mm-hmm. I mean, with the president, who is a young global leader.
These forums constitute the next set of strands in the web, and they interface between the public and the cult inner core. The major cult family, the Rothschilds, created the Round Table, a secret society at its core, in Britain in 1909 through British South African mining magnate and politician Cecil Rhodes. The Round Table includes organisations like the Bilderberg Group, the United Nations, the Council on Foreign Relations, the Royal Institute of International Affairs, and the Trilateral Commission, a member of which is Keir Starmer, by the way. At their core, these organisations are a secret society, but to the public and to most of the people who attend the meetings, they are just a forum for debate and how do we solve problems. Bilderberg Group meetings involve the rich, powerful and influential from politics, business, banking, finance, etc. to coordinate a common policy, and only a few at those meetings will know that that policy is the cult's agenda. The rest will be at varying levels of ignorance and cluelessness. And the United Nations, also part of the Round Table, built on land given free by the cult family, the Rockefellers, is a stalking horse for world government. It was created after the Second World War, and it is fundamentally responsible for the biggest, or propagating the biggest hoaxes in history, the COVID con and the climate con, which I've written about in enormous detail. The United Nations propagates these hoaxes through the World Health Organization, in terms of anything to do with health, COVID, for example, the Intergovernmental Panel on Climate Change, which is a political organisation, provably so, and UNICEF. Politician, at one time Mr. Global Warming, Al Gore, is a frontman for the climate change hoax. Karenna Gore Schiff, the daughter of Al Gore, married into the Schiff banking family, was very close to the Rothschilds. World Health Organization is now owned by a Rockefeller gopher in Bill Gates through funding, and Gates's father, William H. Gates, was an executive of Planned Parenthood, a Rockefeller organization. Some say it's a eugenics organization, which is very fitting because the Rockefellers and Bill Gates are both obsessed with depopulation.
First, we've got population. The world today has 6.8 billion people. That's headed up to about 9 billion. Now, if we do a really great job on new vaccines, healthcare, reproductive health services, we could lower that by perhaps 10 or 15%.
The current head of the World Health Organization is a guy called Tedros Ghebreyesus. Tedros was an executive of a Gates organization called Gavi, the Vaccine Alliance. This is the same Tedros who said that everyone in the world needed to be vaccinated with an alleged vaccine, massively funded, as I show in my book Reality Check, by Bill Gates, who was absolutely everywhere in the COVID hoax, as I show in enormous detail in Reality Check. So he's Director General of the World Health Organization, and he was there saying that everybody should get his mate's alleged vaccine. And Gates has long been obsessed with global vaccination because he's long been obsessed with global depopulation. The Club of Rome, created in 1968 at Accademia di Lincei in Rome, exists to direct the environmental and green movement to advance the culture agenda, which again brings into play human-caused climate change, which is an absolute scientific nonsense. And by the way, what I've also looked at in Reality Check is the idea that 97% of scientists say humans are causing climate change. They don't. Even the Wall Street Journal has exposed that lie. The vast majority of scientists are not saying humans cause climate change. And governments, which are, they make the decisions, they run the country, both at national level and local level, like councils and stuff, and their associated agencies. They form the outer strands of the cult web. And the cult structure is rigidly, fiercely compartmentalized. You can also symbolize this structure as a pyramid. The cult's at the top of the pyramid, and as you go down the pyramid levels, you're meeting more and more and more people who know less and less and less about what that organization or secret society or government, whatever it is actually about. And again, you look at any business, you look at any corporation, you'll find that same model. And if you look at the global pyramid, you have exactly that situation where when you get to the bottom, the people, the general population, they know more about their favorite football team or celebrity gossip than they do about the network and agenda which wishes to enslave them and their families. People lower down the pyramid, implementing something that comes up from on high. They don't even know that on high exists. Mine is not to reason why. And understanding this structure is to understand how the culture agenda can be introduced in different countries at or around the same time, using the same excuses to justify its introduction. Different areas of society lock into the secret society network with an in-the-know inner core, which is this answer to this cult. And in terms of the cult's agenda being introduced in different countries using the same excuses, look at the COVID hoax. In a matter of weeks, the world was locked down, and for some reason every country had exactly the same policies and ideas of how to respond to the COVID hoax. And when you look at masks, for example, in Britain, Boris Johnson said that he was acting on the advice of the World Health Organization. So did Nicola Sturgeon in Scotland. And we now have this pandemic treaty, which didn't really work out, but they'll come back with it, or they'll come back with something similar, which basically would hand power to the World Health Organization to decide the policy of its member states, which is an enormous number of countries worldwide, including Britain. So whatever the World Health Organization says must happen by law, because it's legally binding treaty, must happen. And there'll be no parliamentary debate, not that there was much of that during COVID anyway, and there'll be no national sovereignty in terms of making decisions. And the fine detail of people's lives will be dictated, as we saw during COVID, it was by one organization under one roof and a few people at the top of that organizational pyramid deciding what the rest of the world will do and how they live their lives. And that's why the Rockefellers created the World Health Organization after the Second World War. So one of the agenda's greatest defenses is the belief that changes in society, which have a negative impact on people's lives, through politics, for example, are just incompetence. And to an extent, that is true. The cult's agenda would not work if too many people were aware of the big picture. People say there's too many people who would have to be in on it. No, that's not how it works. Only a tiny few need to have any awareness. Some decisions are made because of incompetence and ignorance, but the real society transforming decisions are coldly calculated. And we have, for example, let's take politics again, that's what we're talking about. In each party you have something called party whips, and their job is to threaten and encourage or even bribe in some cases, or blackmail, if the politicians blackmail, as I talked about earlier, those members in the party to vote the way the party hierarchy wants. And ultimately, the direction of the world and society is not due to incompetence, random happenings, or spontaneous decisions, but cold, calculated design. The vast majority of people believe that it is due to incompetence, and so they see elections as the answer because they believe that governments are making the decisions. You know, electing a new leader or party and the country will be run better. But even if you do get the right people in government, they're only in power for a certain number of years before another lot come along, and they could change it again, or change it back to how it was before. The perception of incompetence is one of the agenda's greatest assets, because while people look to the ballot box to make a change, the agenda will roll on unchecked, and those behind it remain unnoticed. Compartmentalization is key if this agenda is to succeed, and with it, ignorance. This is called the need to know policy, and the cult have decided the population, their target, don't need to know anything. of what I'm talking about now, which is why my podcasts, books, and the alternative media in all its forms exists. Although we're seeing a mainstream alternative media within the alternative media now, whose solution is politics and religion, neither of which are the answer. In fact, they're the problem. I'm going to probably do one of these main headline videos on that very soon. I'm not going to go into too much detail about it now. I've just finished a second edition of my first book, Pay-Per-View in Print, in which I do write about that. And politics is not, and will never be, the answer. Politics is a means to introduce the cult agenda into society through changes in legislation and policy. We need to stop looking for saviours and heroes, and this is another thing that this mainstream alternative media does. Looking for a saviour or a hero and someone to do it for me. That's what it is. You know, when you say to people, and I've noticed this myself, as have other people, when you say to people the answer is to for people to get informed and then stop complying with their own enslavement, they'll give you a reason why that's not the solution, because they don't like that solution, so they look for one they do like politics or religion or whatever else they come up with. We need to stop looking for saviours and heroes. Albert Pike was the sovereign Grand Commander of the Supreme Council of the Scottish Rite of Freemasonry, and he said, "Whenever the people need a hero, we shall supply him." And that's what we're seeing now with these alleged political heroes, Donald Trump being one of them, even though he, far from draining the swamp, he actually gave control of the American economy to Goldman Sachs and appointed swamp dwellers to his presidency and his administration. And we've got Milei now in Argentina, Wilders in the Netherlands, Meloni in Italy. And already there's chaos in Argentina. And straight away, as soon as Milei was appointed. And these people are not saviours. Kennedy, that's another one that certain people are saying would change things in America. He went, and he's massively a supporter of Israel, as are all these political heroes. And Israel controls American politics, controls British politics, and I've gone into that in the books and the podcasts, the audio version of the podcast. These people are not heroes. If we want a hero, we need to look in the mirror and realise that we're the ones who are going to bring about any change. Instead of asking what are they going to do about it, we need to ask what are we going to do about it. Looking to government and authority demeans our own agency and creativity and buys time for the agenda to advance. Authority has no power, only that which we allow to be recycled against us. If we take our power back, it's game over for the cult and their agenda, and it's about time you did that. Thank you for watching.